program structure. We're going to be starting off by looking at the reading test format, and I'll be asking you to put some answers in the chat box in a minute. We'll be looking at common problems that are experienced by test takers in the academic reading test. We'll be looking at the skills and strategies, briefly, that you'll need to develop as test takers to be successful. We're going to be looking at knowing where to look for important information in one of the reading texts. As you'll see in a minute, there's quite a lot of reading that you have to deal with. For those of you who've done the test before, you'll have experience of that. And this is one way that you can cut down on the amount of reading that you have to do. We're going to be looking at 3 question types, giving you a little bit of practice with each. Unfortunately, I won't be able to use full texts due to the size of the slides and the time that we have available to deal with the webinar. We'll be looking at matching headings to paragraphs, true, false, not given, yes, no, not given, and the multiple choice question formats. And I'll be giving you a strategy or putting forward a strategy for each of these that you can use as part of your practice to develop yourselves. Then we'll be looking at top tips. Okay. See if I can move on. Good. What I'd like you to do is put in the chat box what you know about the academic reading text. I'll give you a few questions to help guide you. For example, how long is the test? How many texts are there? How many questions do you have to answer? And how is it marked? Let's see what answers you can come up with in the chat box. Excellent, yeah, good. Sri, good. Tatiana. Oh, and there the answers are flying in now, that's great. John, excellent. Delia, good. 3 sections, 3 past 40 questions, excellent, very good. 1 question for each answer. I didn't get your name because it's flying off the screen, but I got Tina's. Okay, 1 mark for each answer, good, excellent, fantastic. Okay, good, hang on then, let's move on quickly. You're right, the text lasts for 60 minutes. There are 3 texts in the academic reading test. These are taken from newspapers, journals and magazines, books sometimes. And what makes the 3 texts in the academic reading test different from those chosen for the general training reading test is that they are chosen for their relevance for study purposes, rather than being relevant to life in an English-speaking context. The texts are in total about 2,800 words in length. They can go down to just over 2,000. So you can see the first problem that test takers have to deal with is that there's a lot of reading to do in a very limited amount of time. So this hints at the notion that being able to prioritize your time as part of the academic reading test is a highly valid and important skill to develop. When I teach academic reading, I make sure that all the activities I do with the students I have are timed just for this purpose, so they get used to it. Good. The texts are of different levels, or maybe of different levels of difficulty, but they don't come in any order, as in starting with an easy one and ending with a difficult one. They're jumbled up together. Okay. There are 40 questions in total. These can be switched in terms of, this will vary in terms of how many you get for each text, but of the 3 texts, but there will be 40 in total for each of the exams. Okay, marking. You get 1 mark for each correct answer, and there's no negative marking. What this means, and often test takers misunderstand this, if you don't know an answer, you can always guess. It means that if you leave a blank unanswered, you will be marked without getting a mark, so it's been marked wrong. Whereas if you guess, you stand a chance of being right. If you get an answer wrong, you will not be marked down for it. As I said just now, the numbers of questions per text can vary, but there will always be 40 in total. Sorry, there is no extra time added to transfer questions to the answer sheet in the reading test. And often that's something that test takers misunderstand. So when I do my teaching and we're doing practice tests, I make sure that they take that on board. Good. Here is a rough idea, approximation of the reading test scores and how they relate to the IELTS banding system. I say rough approximation because this changes, it varies. So the point I'm trying to make is that if you look at this, say you're aiming at band 8, you're aiming at a range of correct answers. You'll need to get 35 or 36 to get a band 8. To get a band 7, you'll need to answer 30, 31 or 32 correctly and so on. I stress, this is just an approximation. It's a rough approximation. It will be around this. Good. Okay. What I'd like you to do is put what you think are the main problems many test takers experience or can experience with the academic reading text. And if you could put your answers in the chat box. Good, Mirameta, excellent. Time is obviously an issue. Good. Unable to read the whole text. Excellent. Good. Nervousness, yeah, for sure. I can understand that one. Werner, good. Excellent. Okay, thank you. Let's have a look at this. Running out of time. Good. Why do you think students run out, test takers run out of time? I think somebody commented in the chat box just now, trying to read the whole text is a bit of a problem. Other things that happen is that test takers spend too much time on difficult questions or difficult words, which means that they sacrifice time they could be spending on answering other questions more effectively. Remember, if you don't know the answer to a question, you can always put a question mark next to it and come back at the end when you have more time. I think not understanding the question properly or reading the instructions, this is something we'll be looking at in a later slide when we deal with matching headings to paragraphs. Solutions. Developing good reading skills. What does that mean? Well, it means that over time, and it does take time to develop reading. I have great experience with this, having just spent 5 or 6 years doing a course myself, which involved reading academic texts every single day. You need to be aware of the different ways of reading, such as skimming for meaning. You need to be able to survey a text so that you know what the content is going to be in terms of relevance to you. You need to be able to scan for details. And a good way of starting to develop good reading skills outside the classroom is by doing a little bit of reading every day. Pick something that motivates you. Pick something that interests you. That will mean that you actually will follow up and you'll read more about it in other sessions. Don't try and read too much. Make notes in terms of new words and follow them up by keeping records, okay? And I think the other thing that you need to do in terms of a solution is by looking at question and answering strategy, question type answering strategies. As I said earlier, we'll be looking at 3 in this webinar today. And these involve things like underlining key words and sentences. By key sentences, I'm talking about topic sentences, and that's something that we'll be looking at a little bit later in another slide. Reading instructions carefully and understanding them. and I come back to this old chestnut, good timekeeping. I'd put it at actually the beginning in terms of important skills for the reading test. Good timekeeping and being able to prioritize your time and how you use it. Excellent. Okay, what I'd like you to do now is remember, before I move on, that the reading test is not testing your knowledge of a topic or a subject or a theme. It's basically testing your reading abilities, your reading skills. And these are the things, as I said, that you have to build up over time. Okay, what I'd like you to do now is think of particular activities that you think are going to be in the reading test and put your ideas in the chat box. Good, excellent. Jayathu, Timalin, sorry if I mispronounced your name there. Magana, good. Yep, matching. Muhammad, sentence completion. True, false, yes, no, not given. Heba, excellent. Good. Okay, most of you have a good idea about what is in the test, so we'll just go through it very quickly. Good. So most of you mentioned multiple choice, identifying information, true, false, not given, identifying writers' claims, views, attitudes, something we'll come back to a bit later. Yes, no, not given. Matching information. There are actually, and I'll just show you, there are actually 14 different possible types of question types that will be in any one exam. What this means is that what you need to do over time as you practice is make sure that you understand how to deal with each of these and get plenty of practice and interact with your teachers if you're lucky enough to be in a class and ask your questions about them so that you get an idea of what strategies you can use. Excellent, good. Okay, I move on to this finding key information or important information in a text. This is a key reading skill test takers need to develop. Identifying ideas, main ideas, we call them topic sentences in a paragraph, a topic sentence in a paragraph, or the supporting points that back it up. Identifying these is a key skill in both reading and writing tests. One of the important things for you in relation to this is that it means that you can cut down on the need to read everything. So can we have poll question 3? This will focus on you giving me answers as to what part of the paragraph is going to be where you're going to be finding the main meaning or topic sentences. Is it in the middle? Is it the beginning? Or is it the end? If you can't see the poll question, put your answer in the chat box for me, please. We realize that sometimes if participants are using mobile phones, it's not always easy to see everything. Okay, can we have the answers? Excellent. 77% of you can give yourselves a pat on the back. In English discourse, the way it's organized, you generally find that the topic sentence or the main point is at the beginning of a paragraph. It may be the first sentence or it may be the second sentence sometimes. It's rarely in any other place than that. Good, excellent. What I'd like you to do is read this paragraph, which I've taken from a text, and I'd like you to find the topic sentence and tell me in the chat box where you think it starts and ends. And then we'll have a look at it a bit later. Good, Ruth. Ayamide, yes, sort of. We'll come back to that one. Tulia, yes, good. Helen, excellent. It is actually the first sentence. Most of you got that right. And you'll find that in most English texts, academic texts, I'm saying, you'll find that the main point is either the first or the second, which means that when you're actually doing your reading, as we'll see when we come back to this, looking at matching headings to paragraphs, it's important that you underline the topic sentence so you can see it in any given paragraph. As you're doing that, it's useful to read the next sentence because this will give you some of the examples or support examples, evidence to back it up. Good. Right. Have a look at paragraph B and tell me which you think is the topic sentence. Put your answers in the chat channel. Excellent, good. Now it's not a word, it's not farming, that could be a key word, but Ruth, yes, it's the first sentence, good. Tatiana, good. Rosalind, excellent, now you're getting the idea, fantastic. So let's have a quick look at the answers so you can see it clearly. Okay, as I said, sometimes it's not going to be the first sentence, it could be the second. It's rarely at the end, although having talked to my colleagues today, sometimes you may see that happening, but I don't think it's very frequent. It's certainly not a model paragraph structure that I would teach my students for writing, and I guide them to looking at the first sentence or second sentence in reading. Good. Excellent. Okay, now let's have a look at our first question type, matching headings to paragraphs. In this activity, you have to match headings to paragraphs, specific paragraphs in the text. And one thing that makes it hard, or can make it harder, is that there is always going to be more headings than paragraphs. Another problem, which I'm sure those of you who've taken the test have experienced, is that many of the headings will include similar vocab. As you'll see in the example you're going to see in a minute, which means that often test takers can get confused. So let's have a look at a strategy. This looks very wordy, and when you go back to look at the recording, I would make notes of these points and then put them into practice as you do your reading, and you'll find that it gets quicker and quicker and quicker as you practice. First thing to do is read through the headings and underline or highlight key words. That's the headings rather than the topic sentences in the paragraphs. Then identify the topic sentences in each paragraph, highlighting key words. You can do this by putting circles around words. I actually get my students to underline the topic sentence and then put circles around the key words if they're using pencils. The third part of this strategy or process is to match the keywords in the headings to keywords in the topic sentences to look for a possible match. Sometimes you'll see that there is a direct link, as you'll see in a minute. Other times you have to use your vocab skills to look for synonyms. And this is where, as I said, the vocab skills and the need to develop your vocabulary over time really comes in. If you're not sure, choose two headings. You can always put a question mark next to the particular paragraph you can't assign a heading to and come back to it at the end and check it. Okay, make a final choice if you can. As I said, put a question mark by the paragraph heading so that you have time to go back and answer it. But if you can make that decision, make it and be decisive. Don't waste time, because if you do, time priority, you lose time and your time management will go out the window. Good. Let's have a look at a matching heading to paragraphs, an example. I can't, unfortunately, supply you with a whole text. As I said earlier, we don't have a lot of space. So I've given you a topic sentence for paragraph A. what I'd like you to do is take a look at the topic sentence and decide what you think are the key words. I'll give you half a minute. And put your answers in the chat box. Good. Tamelian, excellent. Ravi, good. Government and environment, yes, you're getting the idea. We've sort of skipped a step here for the sake of saving a bit of time. But I think you get the idea, and I've seen from some of your answers that this is a direct match. So put in the chat box what you think the answer is before we look at the answers. Good, most of you got it, excellent. Fine, yeah, good. You can see the direct link here. Let's move on. Excellent, here we see the key words, governments, environmental management in the topic sentence. And you get a direct match between government's management of the environment in heading number 4. Good, excellent. Many of you got that answer right. In fact, I think most of you did. Unfortunately, it's not always going to be the case that there's a direct match. As I said earlier, you're going to have to need to look for close synonyms, as you'll see in the next example. Great. Before we actually look at this example, which comprises of 4 paragraphs, paragraph A, paragraph B, paragraph C, and paragraph D, which comes with 9 particular headings, I want to focus on the notion that, as I mentioned earlier, you need to be able to follow instructions when answering all of the question types in the IELTS academic reading. So what I'd like you to do is read the instruction at the top of the slide. This is before we actually go on to do any of the matching. And I'd like you to try and answer poll question 4, which is just coming up on the screen now. The instruction is write the correct heading from 1 to 9 in Roman numerals in the correct box. Remember, I've given you 3 choices here. You can move it round. I'll read them out to those people who cannot see the poll question because you may be on mobile phones. Choice 1 for correct answer is capital A, 1, B, 2, as in numerals, C, 4, or D, 3. The second option is A, words, spelt 1, B, 2, C, 4, D, 3. The third option is A, Roman numerals 1, B, Roman numerals 2, C, Roman numerals 4, and D, Roman numerals 3. Make your choices and we'll have a look at the answers. Okay, can we have a look at the answers? Excellent. Most of you, I say most of you, nearly all of you have got it right. It's the Roman numeral, it's choice number 3, A1, B2, C4, and D3. I think this highlights the importance for reading the instructions when you're looking at all these different question types, because one of the tests is you're testing your reading skills and how do you understand what the instructions are asking you to do. So for example, some people might write number 1 to number 9 as in normal numbers that we use in the English for English numbers, but that would be wrong and you'd probably lose marks for that. Good, excellent. Okay, let's move on. Excellent. I've done the topic sentence for you in this slide to save a little bit of time. What I'd like you to do is read the topic sentences and maybe read the second sentence and try and make a selection of the headings to get the 4 correct ones. and then we'll look at the answers. If you can put your answers for paragraph A, paragraph B, paragraph C, and paragraph D in the chat box, I'll give you a minute or so to do that, and then we'll come back and look at the answers. Good, Sri, Heba. Good, Dr. Ravi, Dr. Aska, excuse my pronunciation. Numbers are flying in. Excellent. Very good. Excellent. Great. Camila, good. Alban. Right, okay. Excellent. Let's have a look. The answer to A was 2, and I think most of you got that right. In fact, all of you that I saw. The paragraph explains what a greenhouse is, possible uses, and how it works during the day and night. The answer to paragraph B was 1. The paragraph discusses the changes in temperature in a greenhouse and talks about this in relation to the Earth's atmosphere. This one was a bit harder. C was a bit harder. The aim of the paragraph is to explain the process that underlies global warming. There's some information about gases, but it's only there to help explain the process. The focus isn't on the gases. The information about carbon dioxide is additional. And the answer to paragraph D was 5, heading 5. The paragraph discusses whether it's too late or not to change the effects of global warming and provides 3 possible options. Good. Let's move on. Remember, if you've got questions about these question types, feel free to put them in Q&A and the team will be doing their best to answer as many of your questions as they can rather. Okay, let's have another look at another type of question type. And I think this is one that most test takers find very, very difficult, or the most difficult of the 14 question types. The yes, no, not given, or true, false, not given question type. The first point is, what is the difference between true, false, not given and yes, no, not given? Put your ideas in the chat box and let's see, before we discuss what is the difference between them. Good, excellent, Rachel. Tatiana, good. Okay, I think you've got the idea here. Excellent. Yeah, true, false, not given are used by people who write IELTS tests to focus on text that have factual information, could be numbers, could be dates, could be statistics of one sort or another. They use this type to focus on factual information, and they use yes, no, not given when they're dealing with texts which are based around opinions, arguments, attitudes, good. Let's have a look at this. Excellent. Have a look at a simple example. What you'll see at the top of this question type is the instructions. And you'll see that at the bottom there are 3 statements. Then you'll see write true, false, or not given. If the statement agrees with the information, or false if the statement contradicts the information, or not given. And it's the same for yes, no, not given. So yes is the same as true in the sense that it's yes or true if the statement agrees with the information, no or false if the statement contradicts the information, not given if there's no information on this. And we'll see when we look at a strategy that the first thing that you need to do is take the statements and turn them into yes, no questions. So for example, Edinburgh is the capital. That would translate into, is Edinburgh the capital? Yes, no. Why do we do this? As part of the strategy, and we'll come back to this in a minute when you see the strategy, it's far easier to carry a yes/no question in mind than it is to carry what is sometimes a very long statement in mind when you're looking through large amounts of text to find the answer. Okay? Good. So, coming back to this before we do some practice in the next couple of slides. I've just made this comment, turn the statements into yes/no questions. Underline, and I didn't make this point, underline, and we come back to this, underline the key words in the question and quickly think about possible synonyms. Remember, you will often have space or a bit of paper and you can write these down. Again, it sounds like it's going to take a long time. I think with practice, you find that you will get quicker and quicker. Reading skills development does take time. It's not something to say, well, you can do a test in the next 2 weeks if you haven't done any practice. I would suggest that you spend a little more time than 2-3 weeks on practicing your skills. Identify the topic sentences in each paragraph. Scan the appropriate paragraphs and topic sentences closely, looking for keywords and synonyms which relate to the yes/no questions you've created. We'll see how this works in a minute. Read closely to infer meaning, looking for modals and negatives. We'll come back to this point in a minute. Often, test takers focus on the important lexis, but they miss out on the support words, the qualifying words, the modals, and possible negatives. And that's where they make the mistakes, or can make mistakes. Try to come up with an answer. And again, I would put this time priority at the top. Be careful. Don't waste time. Try and come up with an answer and then move on. If you can't answer it, put a question mark down and basically come back at the end and try and redo it then. Okay, here is an actual example for you. What I'd like you to do is see if you can do this one by yourself. Remember to try and turn the statements into questions, and you should be able to find the answers. When you've come up with answers for 1, 2, and 3, put them in the chat box and we'll have a look at them. We'll look at reasons. Good, Rupen, excellent. Anjali, good. Oh, they're flying in. I can't keep up with you now. Good. Rachel, Megana, excellent. Very good. Okay. Let's have a look. It is, where are we? Let's see if I can get my, good. Okay. So here we are looking at 1 is going to be, where are we? So yes, good. 1 is going to be true, 2 is false, and 3 is not given. Now, if you turn those statements into yes/no questions, you should be able to see fairly easily how that relates to the notion of true, false, or yes/no, not given. Again, if you've got questions on that, put them into the chat, into the Q&A channel, and the team there will try and answer them for you. Good. Let's have a look at a yes, no, not given. Remember what I said about this requiring the skill of inference. This is a difficult skill. It's a higher order skill, and it's often one that native speakers find difficult to deal with. And I know when I look at some of the IELTS yes, no, not given questions, I find some of them difficult. So I don't think you need to feel alone if you do find these difficult. Okay, good. Remember what I said about it requiring the skills of synonymy, your vocab skills. Turn the statement, congestion charge seemed essential to reduce traffic in the capital, into a question, yes, no question. I've done that for you to save time. What you then need to do is look at the text and decide which of the words are the key words and which of them match up to the keywords in your question, in your heading. Statement, sorry. If you think it's yes, no, not given, type your answer in the chat box, and then we'll, in about half a minute, we'll look at the answer. Good. I'm glad you're finding the turning the statements into questions helpful. Good. Excellent. Answers are flying in. Remember, don't waste time when you're coming up with answers. Move on. That's one of the difficult decisions you have to make as a test taker with the academic reading test. Probably the same with the general training module as well. Good. Let's have a look. The answer is yes. The link where you need to use the synonymy is here. A tough but necessary decision. This links to this word here, essential. So you see how the notion of synonymy is going to give you the answer. Good. Excellent. Hang on. Okay. Some tips, trips and tricks. I say tricks because often, as I said, you can miss out on things when you're looking at these. It has a comparative structure in the statement. Check that there is one in the text as well. If there is not a comparative structure in both, the answer is likely to be not given. Look for the word all in the text or statement. If one of them says some and the other says all, the answer is going to be false, or it's likely to be false. If the text says majority and the statement says some, these are examples I've come across in past tests, then the answer is likely to be false or not given. Bear in mind, time prioritization is really important. Don't waste time. If you don't know an answer, either guess or come back to it. Good. Excellent. Let's have a look at the third question type that we're going to be looking at today. This is the multiple choice. This is a very commonly used question type in the academic reading text. And it can either be used to focus on specific details, and it often is used for that in tests, details such as numbers, dates, names, or it can be used to focus on more general meaning. So it's a very widely used question type. And I know that from the students I've spoken to, they find it quite difficult at times. In this activity, you're asked to choose the correct answer to a question or the correct ending to a sentence from 3 or 4 possible options. Have a look at the text, which is in blue, and try to decide what you think are the key words in the text, and put your ideas in the chat box. Again, I'm sorry I haven't been able to use a bigger text, but again, space on the slides is a problem. Good. Some of you are getting there. Rachel or Rachel, I think it was. My good, excellent campaign. Very good intervention campaign. Well, good, your ideas are coming up, which is excellent. Very good. You've got the idea. So you're beginning to understand that here, the thing that you do is that you underline the keywords in the stem or the big question. Okay? Good. What I'd like you to do okay, you came up with it. We're looking for words like Norway. I know a couple of you put that down. Intervention campaign, I saw several, which is excellent. Bullying was halved. Yes, I saw quite a few people putting that in. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is look at the options and decide which is the closest option and type your answer A, B, C, or D in the chat box. You may need to look for synonyms to find the answer. Put your answers in the chat box, I'll check. Good, Irma, Therese, yep, Ferdusi, Arthur, Michael, Nagisa, yeah, okay. Yeah, most of you are getting the answer right, which is excellent. And we'll see when we do the strategy that we would be underlining keywords in the distractors as well, but we haven't had time to do that today. Okay, let's have a look. Excellent. So here we've got the keywords, which most of you identified, which is excellent. And we've got the answer, which is distractor A. It says it declined by 50%, and the text uses the word halved. So you can see the need to use your vocab skills for synonymy there. B is wrong, because it says 21 schools reduced the bullying, but the text doesn't say this. It happened across 21 schools. C is wrong, because it says 2 years is the best time for the campaign, anti-bullying campaign. The text has no mention of this. D says bullying is worse in the UK. The text doesn't even mention the UK. Excellent. Good. Let's have a look at the strategy. And I saw most of you got that right, which is excellent, so well done. As I say, don't waste time, and we'll come back to this when we look at this strategy. Be prepared to move on. Read through the possibilities. I didn't mention this to begin with, but this is a very valid point, and make predictions based on logic and any background knowledge you have. You may know the subject area quite well, so use your knowledge there to save time and make an answer based on a prediction, if you can. Underline the key words, which you did in the STEM, the main question part. Also do this in the distractors if you have time. The more you practice this in class before you do the test, the easier it will get. Go to the appropriate part of the text and underline or note the key words. Close read the text to find the best match. Often you find that the multiple choice is one where you have to do the most reading, the multiple choice question type that is, where you have to do the most reading of any given text. As I said earlier, if the answer is not immediately apparent, at least put a question mark or note against any distractors that are clearly incorrect. If you've got time at the end, return to the question. If necessary, guess. Remember, there is no negative marking, which means if you get an answer wrong, you are not going to be marked down. Excellent. Let's have a look at some of the top tips that I've mentioned as part of a summary. Read the text quickly to get the main idea when you're dealing with any of the three texts. And if you've got time, underline what you think are the topic sentences in each paragraph, and read either the second sentence or the last sentence as well as the topic sentence to get a bit of awareness about the meaning that is encapsulated in each paragraph. Remember, analyze questions. In all the question types, I think, that I've touched on so far today, underlining key words or underlining key information is a key skill that you need to take on board. This is one of the ways that you will end up cutting down on the amount of reading that you actually have to do and stop you actually reading line by line, word by word. Okay, look for answers with multiple choice, considering synonyms, and put your possible answers directly on the answer sheet. If you've got a pencil and you're doing it in pencil, you can always go back and erase and change them if you are going back to check things at the end. Make sure you follow the instructions to the letter. Don't start changing and putting in your own ideas and your own interpretations. Text is king, as somebody said to me. I believe it was Sarah. Good. Time management. There will be a clock in the test room. Make sure you use it, and make sure that you don't spend more than 20 minutes on any of the 3 passages. Be prepared to move on and come back if there are questions you haven't answered at the end. Don't stumble. And please don't leave a question unanswered. I'm always amazed at how many of my students and how many test takers I see who leave questions unanswered. Remember, there is no negative marking. So guessing is a very valid skill in the academic reading text. Remember, time is tight. Good. I'm going to leave the presentation at this point and go over to the Q&A channel and see what questions we've got in there. For how long, Zineb, do you think we'll have to study the reading part before the IELTS test? Well, my answer to that, Zineb, is the more time you can spend on practicing the reading question types and doing some practice tests, the better. I often have students who come to me and say, can I do it in 2 weeks? And I think the answer to that depends on what your level is when you're going to start your practice. And I think someone will put the site address in the chat channel for a place you can go to check your level before you do start any practice. It's a very good idea to do that so you know exactly where you're starting from. I would love to focus on sentence completion, but I don't have time to do that today. Victoria, it may well be the focus of another webinar down the line. Victoria, where can I find practice tests? You'll see at the end, in fact, the next slide I'll be dealing with is a resources slide, which gives you access to sites where you can find a variety of different types of resources that you can use for practice purposes, ranging from whole tests down to single skill tests, down to vocab development. So we'll be looking at that in the next in the next slide. Claudia, yes, they will provide you. My understanding is that the exam team will provide you with a pencil in the test room. And one of the advantages of using a pencil, Claudia, is that you can erase things and change things as you need to. You can't do that quite so tightly with a pen. So pencils, I think, is probably better. Let's see what else we've got here. Excellent. As I said, Jayathu, it's important that you use your reading skills when you are thinking in terms of time to spend on reading the text. I would read the paragraph, topic sentence, and underline it, and I would read either the second sentence or the final sentence in each paragraph. Don't waste time by trying to understand every single word. If you've underlined the topic sentences, then basically you know where the main information is before you start dealing with any of the question types. Mohammed, talking about the computer-based test. On the resources slide, you will be provided with access to a site where you can get familiarization, have a familiarization test with the computer-delivered test to see what the difference is. Whether you choose paper-based or whether you choose the computer-delivered test is a case of personal choice, really. Avi, can I capitalize all my answers for computer-delivered test for reading and listening? I don't see why not. So I'd say yes to that. Where are we? How can we improve reading skill, Ali? That's a huge question. I think the best way of answering that to begin with is finding out what your current level is by doing the familiarization test with level test, which I believe one of the team is putting up the link for in the chat channel, and then practice from there. And I would explore each different question type and try and practice it gently, and hopefully your teachers in your classes will be giving you extra practice on top of that. Good. Rihan, I lost myself sometimes to find an appropriate answer. and I don't know which one to choose. As I said, if you have two answers, I would make a note of each of those answers, but I wouldn't panic about it. I would put a question mark next to the particular question with the two answers, and then I would go back and check at the end, and then quite simply guess. Okay? Voila. How can I get all of true, false, not given correct? I think, yes, you're right. That is quite hard. Personally, I wouldn't expect a student to get them all correct, but at least you're trying. So yes, you're right. It is quite hard. Helengiwi, excuse me if I pronounce your name badly. When you receive the link to the recording, you should be able to access it and listen to it or see it for the next, say, 80 or 90 days. Samriti, are they conducting IELTS exams at the moment? As I mentioned, you should go to takeielts.org or ielts.org to find out which of the 80 countries are actually opening up to doing IELTS testing. Okay, so yes, I think there are 80 or around 80 contexts where they are conducting IELTS now. What would be great while I'm talking through the rest of the next slide would be for you to put your comments about what you liked about this webinar into the chat channel. Give us some feedback, that's always useful. Okay, good. We have a number of resources that are available to students, the main one of which, and I've mentioned this website many times today, takeielts.org, is full of support materials and free practice tests which you can go in and avail yourselves of. There is a Take IELTS official Facebook page. If you have questions that we haven't been able to answer, or the team hasn't been able to answer here this morning, then you can take them to the IELTS official Facebook page, and there will be somebody there to answer them. And I believe you will even be able to have a chat with somebody if they're available. Good. There is a free computer delivered familiarization test, as I mentioned. That should be you should be able to access that through takeielts.org or ielts.org, or even via the Facebook page. I would suggest, if you're interested in the computer delivered test over the paper delivered test, check it out. It's a personal choice that you have to make for yourself. Good. Road to IELTS, again, downloadable practice tests, interactive activities, hints and tips on question types. Plenty of practice there for you. Future Learn, there is a free IELTS online preparation course, 3-week preparation course, which you can avail yourselves of. So basically, if you have the time to do it, you can skip across there and join up for a 3-week course. There is an IELTS prep app, which gives you, one of the British Council's IELTS prep app, which gives you instant access to, again, more free practice tests, grammar tips, exercises, quizzes, and much more. Plenty of stuff for you to be getting on with. There's a Word Power app and a Word Ready app, which I know my students, the ones I've taught in Manchester, they really liked it. They use this in between lessons. They use it when they have spare time, playing grammar games, doing matching activities of one sort or another. Okay, good. And there are plenty of books and study guides on the IELTS Word Power app, books and study guides, practice materials, and top tips for both IELTS general and academic training. I noticed there were a couple of questions about the general training module. I didn't have time to focus on it here today. Good. For any of you who are interested in the IELTS indicator test, we've got a link here, which you can access either by taking a screenshot now, or you can wait until you receive the link and then access it via that. to find out a little bit more about IELTS Indicator and which countries are running it. Well, thank you very much for today. I think we've just about run out of time. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. It's got to be the world's biggest classroom I've ever been in, which is great. Good luck with your IELTS training. Good luck with your practice, and stay safe. And we'll see you again soon. Thank you.